Everyone, thanks for joining. I'm just going to run through a couple of housekeeping slides and give you a very brief introduction to the National Manufacturing Institute, and then I'll hand over to the speakers. So today we're fortunate enough to have Matt Bailey from ATI, Harriet Wallerton from NATEP, and Dr. Stephen Stanley from NATEP as well, who will be presenting in just a couple of minutes. For today, the webinar will be recorded and it will be available afterwards on our YouTube channel as usual. Your microphones and the webcams will be switched off just due to avoid background noise. You can type your questions throughout the session via the chat tool and they will be monitored and all questions will be allocated at the end. And please, if you are on Twitter, use the hashtag NMIS Insights and follow the @NMIS_group. And please take some time to complete the survey that will be sent out after the webinar has been completed. So, who or what is the National Manufacturing Institute? As it states there, we are a national asset and we are made up of a group of industry-led manufacturing, research and development facilities. And this is where research, industry and the public sector all come together to hopefully transform skills, productivity and innovation. And with NMIS, our aim is to be a global leader in advanced manufacturing. NMIS will increase the productivity and hopefully reduce the barriers to innovation for small, medium and large businesses. We will also look to stimulate the investment and increase the competitiveness of the manufacturing landscape, be a catalyst for job creation and strengthen the supply chain links overall through the UK and global. And we aim to inspire and attract talent and equip the current workforce with new skills required for the business that they are working in. And we hope we also work with manufacturing businesses of all size, from micro SMEs to large kind of global conglomerates. And we work across a multiple and variety of sectors and we provide benefits across the whole of Scotland. Collaboration is everything to us, and we are operated by the University of Strathclyde, and we are supported by a number of partners there. As you can see, I won't read them out all individually, but collaboration is key for all. In terms of the NWIS group, just now as it stands, we have two specialist centres. The Advanced Forming Research Centre, which hopefully some of you already know. We have the Lightweight Manufacturing Centre, and within the core elements of NWIS, we have the Digital Factory, a collaboration hub, and a Manufacturing Skills Academy. So that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Matt from ATI. Matt.
Morning, everybody. So my name is Matt Bailey. I'm a senior technologist in the ATI's Structures, Manufacturing and Materials team. I joined the ATI a little bit over a year ago now. And before that, I spent the best part of a decade working at Airbus and was in a number of different teams working in research and technology, but also in manufacturing, cost engineering. So a reasonably broad background there. So this morning I'm going to be talking to you and giving you a very high level overview of the ATI and a bit of an introduction to who we are and some of the support that we provide to the industry. So I'll start at the very top level here then. So the ATI, we were started in 2014 and we're an independent organisation but backed by both government and industry. So our mission is to promote transformative technology within air transport, and we own and create the technology strategy for the aerospace sector for the UK, and we fund world-class research and development. There's some stats there about the program. So the initial program being to date, then about 1.6 billion of grant funding, and that's then matched by industry, so about 3.2 billion of funding so far. 343 projects in the portfolio and growing constantly, of which nearly 200 are currently live. So a broad reaching portfolio, a broad impact and clearly sort of a significant amount of grant funding. If we go to the next slide, please. So in terms of that funding, so I'll start at the top level in terms of what we do in terms of that funding. So we have several different streams that where we can provide funding, and they're tailored really to different sizes of organisations. So the sort of the key part of the ATI is the strategic program, and current annual budget for that program is 240 million pounds of grant funding, with typical project sizes spanning anywhere from sort of 5 up to 50 million, typically about 3 years in duration, and these are industry-led projects, but with an academia or RTO organisation contribution. It's a two-stage process. So any organisation that wishes to apply for this funding, there's an initial expression of interest stage, which then, if successful, is then invited to apply at a full stage application. I'll talk about the sort of the timeline for that on the next slide, but that's the mainstay of the program. We also have a smaller business call, but at the moment there's not currently one live, although we're looking to put out a call for this hopefully later this year, and that's in development. But these would be for smaller organisations, but smaller amounts of grant funding as well. I won't touch on NATEP because my colleagues Harriet and Stephen will be giving a very detailed presentation following me to talk about that program in more detail. And we also do have some periodical international bilateral funding calls. So in the past, we've done one with Sweden, and looking at future opportunities. So there are potential for some sort of future EU country collaborations coming soon. Just to highlight, though, really about some of the general conditions for ATI funding. So we're looking to fund technology development, so not product development. The projects that come to us for grant funding should be within the scope of the technology strategy, and I'll spend some time going through that shortly. Need to be undertaken by UK registered companies in the UK, and really we're providing benefits to the UK economy. Finally, there's also the ATI framework agreement, which would need to be signed, and that is available on our website, and you can look at that at your leisure. If we go to the next slide, then here is just some of the dates of the strategic program that I mentioned. So the sort of the larger funding stream available through the ATI. So the expression of interest, the EOI phase, so that runs monthly, and I've got the dates here for the next quarter of the final quarter of the year, and then the if successful there, be invited to a full stage application, which is in early 2023. So this is just to give you some context of those timescales. So if we go to my next slide, so the ATI technology strategy then. So we've very recently released the updated version of the strategy, and that's Destination Zero. So that was released earlier this year on the 26th of April. There is a webinar available on our YouTube channel that launched that, and you can also go and download that strategy document as well from our website. But this is setting out the technology journey for aerospace to 2050. So for us, this is defining the priorities. So the priorities for the UK aerospace sector, setting out objectives, and also a means of quantifying our impact. So how have we progressed against those targets to deliver these technologies? So the key thing about this strategy is that really it breaks down into three technology roadmaps, which I'll go through now, which make up the basis of those priorities. So if we go to the next slide, I'll introduce the first of these roadmaps. So this roadmap here is the Zero Carbon Emission Aircraft Technologies roadmap. So apologies of the site test on all of these, but again, like I say, you're welcome to go download them from our website in your own time and to look at them in more detail. But the Zero Carbon Emission Aircraft Technologies roadmap is looking at all of the technologies that contribute to a zero emission at tailpipe aircraft. Whether that be battery electric, whether that be hydrogen combustion, either direct hydrogen combustion or through a fuel cell, so a hydrogen electric aircraft. And it spans the propulsion and power, so that's some of those different options I talked about in terms of the powertrain. The advanced systems then that contribute to that aircraft, and then also some of the structural technologies. So, some of the main challenges here are around the future hydrogen combustion, the future hydrogen gas turbines, the high temperature fuel cells. In terms of the aerostructures and the systems, then it's the challenges of liquid hydrogen, so cryogenic liquid hydrogen, the challenges that gives us in terms of the storage, the distribution, but then also the opportunities that may open up in terms of the aircraft architecture for things like the wings, where suddenly now these would be more likely to be dry because we have discrete tanks for the hydrogen, and so it highlights some of those opportunities that we could look to exploit in terms of the efficiencies of the wing. So a very high level overview of that zero carbon roadmap. If we go to the next slide, please. So this then is the ultra efficient aircraft technologies roadmap. So this is a more conventional aircraft, very much the incremental improvements on the aircraft that we see flying around today. These are very much very active projects within our portfolio today. So looking at, from an aerostructures point of view, how we create ever more efficient aerostructures, higher aspect ratio wings. Again, some of those advanced systems that contribute to that through sort of lighter components, more electric systems, and then also from a propulsion and power point of view. Whilst it may be a more conventional gas turbine, it's looking at how we firstly then push the efficiencies of that gas turbine through ever increasing bypass ratios, so an ultra high bypass ratio engines, but also how we introduce sustainable aviation fuels, or SAF, into the mix, and enable these aircraft to be able to use these types of fuels. So, like I say, a very high level overview of this roadmap. And then the final roadmap, if we can go to the next slide. So this is then the cross-cutting enabling technologies roadmap. So these technologies aren't specific to one of those two products I just discussed. Actually, what we're looking at here are those broader sort of building blocks that enable us to be able to design, manufacture, and support in service those aircraft that I'd already spoken about. So what we have here are the tools around the design and validation. So ever increasing amounts of modeling simulation capability, more integrated multi-physics modeling, but then also how we move forward through into an ever greater proportion of digital validation and certification, moving away from physical testing where we can, through manufacturing and assembly. So we're looking at some of the fundamental sort of technologies here around the metrology, around near net shape components with greater material utilization, next generation of materials, whether that be composite or metallic, but also a nod to a greater sustainability is how we then start to become more circular in terms of these materials, reprocessing them, recycling them, and improving the circularity of the aerospace sector. And then finally, a little bit about through life support. So perhaps not the greatest focus, but certainly still part of our portfolio. So we're looking at structural health monitoring technologies. We're looking at the digital, what digital enables in terms of feeding back data from the in-service into the design, and how we can optimize that. And again, like I say, about how we process the materials at the end of life. So a very high overview of our three roadmaps, but fundamentally, when applying to the ATI for funding, so whether that be through the strategic program I mentioned, the Smaller Business Call, or through NATEP, as Harriet and Stephen will talk about, what we're looking for is how these technologies align and address the priorities as laid out in these technology roadmaps. So hopefully that's some helpful context there. If we go to the next slide, please. So beyond the technology strategy, the ATI does support the sector through other publications that we make. So if you go to our website, there are a number of reports available. So some of the ones we've done recently are about the sustainable aviation fuels and the challenges to integrate and ramp up these fuels into the infrastructure system. We do specific roadmaps around certain technology areas. So supplementing the roadmaps we just saw, we look at some technologies in more specific detail. So personally, I've published a roadmap into shape casting in aluminium and in joining technologies in the last year. So again, they're available to download from our website. We also have a series of insight papers, again, with a similar objective, but sort of information about different areas of interest and sort of further data to support the sector. And we also have the FlyZero project. I'll just mention it here, but on my next slide, please, I've got a little bit more detail about the FlyZero project. So it recently came to a close, but the FlyZero project was a 1 year long project, which was led by the ATI, but heavily supported by industry. So a lot of participants into the project were so seconded from large industrials across the aerospace sector in the UK. So Airbus, Spirit, GKN, to name a few, Rolls-Royce. So they came along, worked for a year to really go away and look at the challenge of how we can decarbonize the aviation sector, and what was the viable fuel of the future. So the ATI project went away with that challenge for a year, was able to really go and put some more detail and some go and study some of these challenges at a relatively high level, but set out a vision of a future of aviation powered by liquid hydrogen. And there are a couple of concept aircraft that they generated that sort of put out there to inspire people. But the aircraft we see there on the left is the mid-range aircraft, which I believe has it's a liquid hydrogen powered direct combustion aircraft, and it's capable of going pretty much anywhere in the world with one stop. I think it's got a quoted range of 5,250 nautical miles. So from a feasibility point of view, the FlyZero project sort of showed that liquid hydrogen, obviously subject to all of the technical challenges to realize that onto an aircraft, showed that it was viable as a solution that could enable us to be able to achieve all the flights that we do today with kerosene burning aircraft. But actually, one of the outputs of that then is a huge amount of data, which can be highly relevant and support the aerospace sector in the UK. So all of those reports are available to download from the ATI website. There is a significant amount of data and information there, and I would suggest that if you are able to go look at those, like I say, it's a valuable resource of information to support the sector. Next slide, please. So some other tools. So we do have other tools and databases available. So also from our website, so we have the fixed trade calculator. So that is a tool which again can support applications, but it may also just support in terms of understanding the impact that different technologies could have over the lifetime of an aircraft. So the potential benefits in terms of fuel saving through weight improvements, through drag improvements of a specific technology. That resource is there available to support the sector. Very soon, we hope to be able to release a market forecast tool. So again, that will allow you to look at different scenarios, segments, have a look at the product breakdown structures. So how we're breaking down these certain products and the value of those. We have data available. So we have a database of infrastructure, so national infrastructure database. And we've also been doing sort of specific activities around tooling. So for tooling for aerospace, and recently published a tooling directory, which is available from our website. But generally, we're available here to help and support. So if you have an idea for a project or to explore the potential for funding, then you can get in touch with us. There are links on our website to get in touch with us. You can submit draft expressions of interest to us, and we are there to support and give feedback, constructive feedback to help with those before making any formal submission. We're active in terms of other events, and actively trying to build consortia of organisations across the UK where we see a mutual benefit between different organisations. We're in a very privileged position in terms of where we sit to be able to see the priorities of different organisations. And finally, we do organise regular conferences, seminars, events ourselves. And I think if we go to the next slide, then just to make you aware of one of those, which is our Destination Zero conference, which would be held in Birmingham on the 15th and 16th of November. And so that's all from me. Very high level, very quick, but hopefully that's given you a good overview of the ATI strategy, who the ATI are, and some of the funding routes which are available. And I'll hand over to my colleague Harriet, who'll go through the NATEP programme.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much. So NATEP, my name is Harriet Woolerton. I'm the NATEP Programme Director. My background is in actuation systems. I started working for Lucas Aerospace back in 1998 and was there for some years before joining the ADS and the NATEP programme. Next slide, please. Okay, so NATEP is a government scheme. As Matt said, it's part of the ATI programme. What's different about NATEP is that it doesn't just provide the funding, it also provides the mentoring. Stephen's going to go into more detail in that in just a little bit. It's open, you have to be a UK company and it has to be led by an SME, but you can partner with other other industrials or with RTOs such as the AFRC or the University of Strathclyde. They have to be in line with the strategy, the projects that Matthew just went through, but our technology managers know the strategy quite well. So if you're not sure, you have any doubts, do come to us and we'll do our best to guide you through that. And we can have conversations with you and help engage with the ATI to have conversations with them if it's not at all clear. Next slide, please. Okay, so the projects are 300k costs maximum, and there's an 18-month duration. The mentoring that Stephen's going to tell you about comes right from the very beginning when you have that first idea, and it goes through that submission of the proposal and the delivery of the project. And actually, for some projects, more importantly even, it helps with the dissemination of that technology. Once you've developed it, getting it into companies that are going to be interested in buying it and helping make those introductions for you. Next slide, please. So we have a team of technology managers around the UK. This slide pack will be available to anyone who wants it afterwards, so you don't need to necessarily remember all of these names. Stephen and James cover Scotland, but we have people covering the whole of the UK. Next slide, please. So if you're a small company, you can get 70% funding and a maximum 70% of the project costs. So that means that out of that £300,000, you can have 70% of that, and you can get 70% of that 70%. I don't know why everything's 70%. It just makes it more confusing for us. If you're a medium-sized company, you can still lead the project, but you can only get 60% of funding. Large companies can be part of the project. We've had Rolls-Royce as a successful funded partner on one of the projects, but they are only allowed a maximum 30% of the project, and they can only be funded to a maximum of 50%. This does mean that in the old days, everyone just got 50-50, and so it was relatively simple in terms of the maths, but we can help you through that and help guide you with that. But you have to be a small or a medium-sized company to lead the project, and you have to be in a collaboration. Next slide, please. So the process, and this is how we mentor, we try and help it so that we tailor it to what you want. The outline proposals that we're looking for now need to be submitted to us by the 5th of September for the autumn call 22. The outline proposal form is available on our website, and it's basically the Innovate UK 10 questions that you've probably seen if you've ever applied into any Innovate UK project or programme. We like to have that first light touch because it allows companies to fill out the form without investing too much time and energy to understand if their technology is something that is of interest to the industry and if it's something that it is worth them investing the time in the proposal, but also in the project for. Sometimes people have a really great solution, but they haven't identified the problem. And so doing things like the outline proposal allows us to help you with that and helps you take things forward. Once you've submitted your outline proposal, we take it to our industrial panels, which are around the UK, and they will go through the proposal. They know a lot about the market and the technologies. They give extra feedback and added value to that proposal, and the technology managers will help you with that feedback. You then complete the full form, which is again exactly the same 10 questions, but in more detail and with more appendices. And you send that back in, and you again goes to the industry panel, but the project also comes and presents in person to the panel, which helps us understand more about what your project is. Finally, you submit directly into the Innovate UK system, which is independent of us. You can come in at any stage. You can come in at outline, you can come in at the full proposal, or you can go direct into IFS and miss us out altogether. But statistically, the companies that come to us from the beginning have a better chance, or have shown to have had a better chance of success, because their proposal has been worked on for longer and has had more inputs and has more of the detail around the technology that they're developing that is a requirement of that proposal. But the deadlines are written below, but do come to us at any point that you have an idea, and we will guide you as to what the best option for you is and how we think we can best help. Next slide, please. So I've already said you've got to be an SME and it's got to be collaborative, and it has to be done in the UK. This ATI strategy that Matt's already gone through, more information can be found that on the ATI page, and we have some more details of the criteria on the NATEP website. I won't go read through all of this, but as I said, if you come to speak to us, we can guide you through these hoops. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand you over to my colleague, Stephen Stanley, who's going to tell you a little bit more about his role and what the role of the technology managers is. Also, on the call, but not presenting today, we have Colin Hart, who heads up the SC21 team in ADS. So if you have questions regarding competitiveness improvement, save those for the end. He's not presenting today, he's just waving. He's not presenting today, but he is here for questions if you have any. I'm going to hand over to Stephen now, and he's going to take you through the next stage.
Hi, I'm Stephen Stanley. I'm a NATEP technology manager. I'm one of the 2 technology managers that cover Scotland. I've been a NATEP technology manager now for just over 4 years. My background is in materials and surface science. So I did my PhD in thin film coatings, and I've worked through industry in terms of equipment manufacture, but also within the defence industry for components for aerospace and defence. If you go to the first slide, please. So as Harriet has mentioned, we've got technology managers distributed around the UK. We're all from different backgrounds, whether or not that be project management, engine performance, composites, as you can imagine. But what we all have in common is we all have significant experience within government funded and government funded innovation projects. Now that may well be, as I said myself, I've been involved in defence, so maybe defence programmes, maybe large European projects or Innovate UK projects. But we've all had engagement and in-depth involvement with managing projects of that type. So we're familiar with the type of experiences that you will be going through. If you go to the next slide, please. So in terms of what is the mentoring, what do we actually provide, what do we support you with? So we like to describe ourselves as a critical friend. So we are there from the start to help with the project. We want to see the project success. It is public funding, so we want to see that public funding used to the best potential, and we want to see projects and companies grow. So we are there to be a friend to the project, to make sure that the projects and the companies and the RTOs get the best and maximum benefit from these as they can, but also to see that they've reached their true potential. So in that side, that we're also going to be critical. So if we feel that individual partners or certain aspects need to be improved, we have to be there and supportive enough to be able to identify that and challenge you on that and bring that forward. So we really are there to engage and bring it through as well as we possibly can. So we move to the next slide, and I'll go through what we start with. So in terms, what do we actually do? So as Harriet mentioned, we try to engage from the very start of that idea, so we can help and support with project formation. Now that can be with RTOs coming approaching us and saying they have new technology. It can be SMEs approaching us and saying we have this technology, we're looking for partners, who can we go to? We even have end users that come and ask and say, look, we're trying to develop this, who has the capability and who can we develop and get a project together for? So we can help bring that formation together. We can also help in terms of the structure of a project. You know, we've seen a good number of projects now, not just from our own backgrounds, but through NATEP. We see what makes a good project, what makes a good project plan, in terms of how to effectively manage the risk of an innovation project and actually to manage that project all the way through to success. To that, we also do critical review in terms of the proposals. So again, we can sit there and support and review them as you go through various iterations of that, and also through the panels. So we can help and support when the panel does give feedback, help in terms of getting that to the next stage. But also we are there, again, that critical friend side, where there's that friendly support. When you come in person to do a presentation stage to the industry panel, we will be there in person to see you, to greet you, and to sit on that panel on your behalf as well, to understand anything that's missing. And then obviously the further support into the final stage at the innovation funding portal for Innovate UK. So if we move to the next slide, please. So what do we actually do? Obviously that's the part to be able to get you the funding. That's obviously the critical part. What do we do afterwards? So from the NATEP point of view, we help in terms of from the very start of you being awarded funding. So before Innovate UK actually engage with the monitoring officers, we will reach out to you and basically explain the whole process, what they're going to start asking for, documentation and evidence, things like collaboration agreements, the financial due diligence that will be done, and a lot of the other documentation that you'll need to provide within that first 30 days of notification. So we can help and support with that. We have some templates, we can review documents and go through the whole process, just in terms of demystification, but also you can imagine the complicated emails to come through to somebody who's not aware of the Innovate UK process. We can also engage and support through IP and risk training. So risk we expect to develop through the project, but IP training for a lot of projects, there needs to be an awareness of that from the very start, particularly when engaging with collaboration agreements between RTOs, SMEs, and maybe sometimes larger entities. It can be quite complicated, and we'd like to ensure that that is tied down and understood from the very start. Obviously, the important part is the money, so we can help in terms of the claims, what is eligible, what isn't eligible, how to go through the claim process, how to go through the financial uploading of your claims on the IFS system, and also support you through that before you actually have the meetings and review stages with Innovate UK. So we can do first off meetings with you and go through the presentation slide, which we can also provide you templates for, but also in terms of prompt you with the kind of questions you're going to get asked. We can also support you with end users. I've got some examples of that later on, but again, you can imagine for a small SME with 2, 3, or a handful of people, going down to the likes of an Airbus and sitting down with many people in a room can be daunting at times. So we can help and sit there as an impartial representative in that room and try to make sure that end users stay on track in scope, which can sometimes be challenging for an SME. We also help and support through the actual delivery of the project. So a lot of the projects that I've engaged with in the past, we are seen as that critical friend, a sounding board for a lot of problems that come through, whether or not that be personnel problems, risk or partner problems within the project, or issue resolution on how to go about doing certain aspects. But also then obviously critical, and one of the key activities for NATEP is the exploitation planning and dissemination. So we'll do a lot of support on that in terms of key events to be able to get your projects out. I'm going to talk about a couple of projects shortly here, which is part of that dissemination and getting the message out of what key developments our companies are doing. So if you move to the next slide, please. So I'm going to go through a couple of our projects. explaining obviously what they have done and the success, but also where NATEP has supported them. So this company is with a company called TCS, Technical Composite Systems. They've done 2 NATEP projects with us now. This is the first one. They were doing a conformal composite baseplate antenna. So it's an antenna. They were trying to make it much smaller in terms of the envelope it was using on an aircraft. I have to admit, till I'd seen this project, I wasn't personally aware of how many antennas there were on an aircraft. But this technology they were looking at is actually reducing the real estate, the depth, by 80%. So they were looking at really making it much smaller, which is obviously a key advantage for aircraft, but also reducing the weight. They were using a key technology from University of Exeter in terms of metamaterials to reduce the depth of their antennas within there, and incorporating that within the composite base plate used by Technical Composite Solutions. In terms of the support NATEP provided, this was one of the first Innovate UK projects this company had done. So we engaged with them in terms of how to get the application together, how to get the proposal to a state that could be funded, but also helped in terms of the support of how the Innovate UK process works, how their claims need to go through. Also, there was a little bit of vendor support there in terms of how to engage with a university, some of the key challenges there between SMEs that haven't done that before and a large end user. But we still work quite a lot with dissemination of this project. They speak very well at a lot of our events still and endorse NATEP very well for us. If we move to the next slide, please. So this one was one of my projects, a company called Grey Cells, headed by Haydale in the Midlands. They were looking at doing composites with graphene embedded within them and evaluated in terms of lightning strike. So they were looking at ensuring that composites, which typically have to have either a copper mesh or some other kind of veil to allow resistance to lightning strike, they were trying to do away with the copper mesh, which causes a lot of manufacturing issues and costs for the likes of Airbus and GKN. This project went through a couple of challenges. One is the second partner there was Element, who actually went through a change of ownership partway through the project, which went through obviously quite a number of paperwork stages to do that. So there was a lot of support in that side, but also they had the Airbus, GKN and BAE all extremely well engaged with this project, which is a little bit of a challenge when you have a small company trying to meet a lot of expectations and keeping that on track. So a lot of my time on this was spent keeping them on board but managing their expectations of what is feasible within the NATEP project and within the timescales. I have to say Haydale did a fantastic job in terms of meeting the deliverables. They certainly exceeded my expectations and those of the end users in this project. So they did extremely well in a very challenging project and environment. If we go to the next project, please. So this one is Domin. Domin, we're looking at using novel designs and integrating additive manufacturing technology to look at making new actuators for flight control surfaces. They were looking at obviously pitching lightweighting, reducing 50% compared to existing systems, but also increasing the bandwidth of them. So technologically, very good fit in terms of lightweighting, but also again in real estate, so making these packages smaller. But also in terms of the technology they've managed to bring this to market quite quickly and make good progress with it. In terms of NATEP support for the Domin project, a lot of this was around the dissemination and introduction to other partners. So we did a lot of work in there in terms of helping them find key supply chain people when they were struggling in certain areas, but then in terms of getting their message out and allowing them dissemination opportunities at the likes of advanced engineering, at Farnborough, or the kind of places where they need to get this component out. We also supported them in terms of their business case, how to be able to get that forward. Again, that exploitation route is quite a key point post-project. We want to make sure there's commercial success. We need to make sure that projects that don't just develop a fantastic technology, but can actually take that to market and know how to go through to that next route. Okay, if we go to the next slide, please. And this is the final one I'm going to talk about for the moment. So the Alpha Seal project, this was around about how you have a seal between different surfaces, particularly on things like wing components, on the ailerons, where you have gaps in seals or where you have fasteners, and you are basically disrupting the airfoil and the airflow on that surface. So the Alpha Seal is a sealing technology that ensures that disruption is kept to an absolute minimum. And they were working with Airbus and some other end users on here that were very well engaged, because the level of improvement they could see on this actually reduced the fuel usage quite considerably. And what we have done, particularly on this project, is support them not only at the application stage, because the application stage required quite a bit of support on this project, to get them from not trying to do a commercial pitch, but trying to do a pitch for Innovate UK funding, but also in terms of the dissemination, trying to get this kind of technology out and known into the wider industry. It's quite a difficult concept to get out there unless you're already within that field. So that's the two aspects that we work quite closely with this particular project. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to hand back to Christine now, and we'll take some questions.
Sorry, as I find my unmute button there. Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much to all of our speakers today. That has come to the end of the presentations. So yeah, happy to have a look at some of the questions that have been coming in as they're throughout the day. Let me just run through these. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Laura, for picking up everything. And thank you, Barry. Yeah, so we have a number of our colleagues from NMIS on the call today. And if anybody online wishes to know anything with regards to any of the NMIS capabilities or anything like that, they can contact us. So if we start with Jonathan Simpson has asked, are any of the ATI funds always on, or are these in the form of calls? And what is the average time for projects to be appraised for funding? Does this depend on the amount? Are successful projects announced in one go, or as and when funding is approved for each?
Okay, I guess I'll take that one. So the strategic program is, I guess it's not always on, but it's very regular in terms of the calls that are available. So the expression of interest call is monthly, and we expect that to happen, every month without fail. There'll be a call there. Typically, so the assessment for an EOI is around about 3 weeks. So from the close of that to being notified if you've been successful, at approximately 3 weeks. The full stage call, though, typically are about quarterly. So if you have typically 3 EOIs that then feed into a quarterly full stage application call. I mean, end to end in terms of being successful, it's quite a long process. So if I look at the example of the next call, then so the batch 39 full stage, so the first EOI for that will open in September, and I wouldn't expect you to be notified finally through the entire process until April next year. So it is a long sort of period there. But like I say, there's a relatively regular sort of drumbeat of those EOIs to sort of get into the process, but end to end, it's quite a long process. I guess Harriet sort of comments on the sort of the regularity of NATEP, perhaps.
Yes, thanks, Matt. So the NATEP calls, we've got another one in autumn, another one in spring. That will be the end of this phase of the NATEP programme. We're looking to government to organise the next phase, which we hope would just carry on. But normally NATEP has 2 calls a year. The timeline is not dissimilar on NATEP to ATI. You can do shorter on the NATEP system if you just go direct in an IFS. But as I mentioned, you've got statistically the ones that come in direct at IFS have not such a good chance, partly because the proposals haven't been wire brushed as much, and you can only apply twice into any of these schemes with the same project. So it is worth taking the time to get it as good as you can the first time, because then if there's any sort of things you need to correct slightly, tweaking, you have the second time to have a go. If you use your first attempt in as your attempt to test the water, you're only left with one other chance after that, and that doesn't work usually so well. Sometimes it does, but but I would, if it were me, I'd probably go in with a little less confidence and a little more preparation. But everyone can do what they want.
Thank you, Harriet. Jonathan, hopefully that answered your question. Evgenia, you've got several questions for Matt. Go for it.
Yeah, as usual. Matt, thank you very much for your presentation. And I was quite pleased to hear that it will be a separate type of the funding soon available, which you called international bilateral funding. As you mentioned that not all the details are available right now, but maybe you can give us a bit more of a high-level flavor. Who should lead it? What is the expected consortium for these calls, and what is the funding scale for this one? So is it the high level, mid-level, or low level?
Is that for the international call specifically?
Yeah, that's for international particular, yeah.
Okay. So I guess, yeah, so they're relatively infrequent. There are discussions ongoing. It's always a challenge, with international collaboration, and there are often things beyond our control that are also driving how quickly we can pull these things together. So in the past, it's been sort of targeting. So the Sweden example is one where we had sort of very specific projects. There's a collaboration between an organisation in the UK and an organisation in Sweden, looking to collaborate to develop a specific technology.
Yeah.
I believe in terms of the sort of the lead of these, I believe it is always in terms of how we prefer it, which is in terms of industrially led research, but there is that opportunity for sort of academia or RTOs to be involved in that, but there's normally a limit on that overall percentage of the grant funding. At least in the main program, that's 30%. I don't know if that varies on the specifics of one of these international calls. But again, there is a variation in terms of the size of the organizations involved. But there's not really any constraints there. If there's a clear opportunity for a collaboration between a UK organisation or whatever other international partner that we've been able to create the bilateral call for, there's always an opportunity there. So
that's great. Thanks very much. I'm asking because AFRC has quite a lot of international collaborators, and actually they are brilliant in the development of the technologies and providers, and obviously we are going through different stages, and quite frequently we already been working with them on the development of some initial case studies. But as usual, to be able to bring something to the TRL 5 and 6, you require quite a substantial funding. So in my vision, this opportunity, especially we are knowing each other already for many years, have established the relationships, and exactly know what we want to do. The opportunity of the international call, which is a bit limited right now, frankly speaking, it will be absolutely amazing to have this opportunity. If you don't mind, I've got another question to you, which is a bit simpler, I hope so. One of the slides which you presented in terms of the roadmaps mentioned that there is a particular section which is dedicated to development of the next generation of the materials. And with regards to this, there are a couple of aspects which I would like to ask you to elaborate a bit more. So as we know that there are certain and very solid requirements for the material which is specifically applied for the aerospace, and if the new material is developed, then it is a long process of the certification, testing, and so on and so forth. So if this theme or the area currently on your roadmap, is it an expectation that it will be a route how this certification will be shortened, simplified, or how these materials will be accepted for the new generation of the airplanes?
I think that's definitely part of it. So I think that the part of it is the physically the new materials itself, but also how we look to speed up that process, how we look to digitize that process more, move away from the physical testing. So there's aspects of, yes, creating new materials, but then also improving that process where we can use advanced computing to be able to predict behavior better, how we can, yeah, like I say, remove the need to do physical testing and characterize things. So there's sort of two parts to it, but yes, absolutely, there's an ambition around how we moved away from the physical testing, but then also how we deliver those materials for those challenging environments, very specific to aerospace. So there's plenty of challenging criteria in terms of cryogenic compatible materials with the other challenges of aerospace that we see through the different roadmaps, challenges that will need to be addressed.
Perfect. Okay. And my last question is actually related to your very last comment. So is there any good and meaningful summary? What are the requirements for this next generation of the materials?
So, I mean,
I could assume that you will say, well, we need lighter materials, which will be stronger and which will be cheaper.
lighter materials, better material utilization, more energy efficiency for those materials. I mean, that's certainly some of the challenges. I would also say that it's definitely worth looking into some of the Fly Zero documents. So, certainly around that future zero emission aircraft, that there's a whole sort of host of data available and some very detailed reports that go into really spelling out what those challenges are for some of those next generation materials are. So I would suggest, if you want more detail about that, then to refer to the Fly Zero reports, which are available from our website.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much. That's me for today. Thank you. I will let other people ask questions as well.
That wasn't as bad as usual. Thank you very much. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any more questions in the chat. Obviously, you guys know that you can reach out if you have any questions, after the fact. But yeah, Debbie, I think we could to bring it to a close. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today.
That's great, Stephanie. Thanks very much. And yes, thanks very much to everyone for joining us today, and hope you did enjoy today's webinar. And would just like to thank our presenters, Harriet Willerton and Stephen Stanley of NATEP, and Matt Bailey of ATI, and Evgenia and Stephanie from NMIS. Thanks very much, everyone, and we'll just now bring the webinar to a close. Thank you.